Okay, so we are now looking at Chapter 8, the final part of our big, culturally at least connected idea of geography. So this is kind of the bookend to that. So we're looking at, for this video anyway, the introduction to political geography. So you want to understand kind of the politics of the organization in geographic spaces and why that is important. All right, so just kind of quick definitions here. Our definition of a state, and mind you, when we do stuff in class, it's completely, they're more guiding questions rather than just kind of hopping in. But anyway, so the definition of a state within the idea, again, of politics and political geography is not what you'd think. Okay, typically when we think about states, we think about, like Minnesota, we think New York, we think, Texas, California, dot, dot, dot. However, if you look at this definition in a political geographic context, those are not actually states, and we'll expand on that a little bit more. So a state is an area organized into a political unit and ruled by an established government that has control over its internal and foreign affairs. So the one thing that doesn't make places like Minnesota, Texas, California, New York, all the other 46 states in the US that are not states, by this definition, is that control over foreign affairs. They have some control over the internal affairs, things like taxes, things like local police, fire, schools. However, Minnesota does not have the right or the ability to control all foreign affairs with Canada, with Mexico, with China. That is the stuff that's done on the national government inside of Washington, D.C. by the leaders, in D.C. So that's why when we talk about the definition of a state, we're not talking about, again, the 50 states. We're talking about the entire country itself. So when we say the word state, and going hopefully from here forward through the rest of the course, when we say the word state, we refer to countries that have this ability, ruled by an established government that has control over internal and foreign affairs. So the United States is a state. Mexico is a state. United Kingdom, a state. Canada, China, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, dot, 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 keep going with all those different countries are states. All right. Now, mind you, a lot of them have internal regions like, like what we have here, where, we have, or like within Canada that are like provinces and things like that, where we typically think of those as states, but that's not our definition going forward anymore. And now you should be able to use this in that kind of context going forward. All right. So that's kind of our thing. So that word state is now interchangeable with the idea of what we call a country, as long as it fits within these definitions, okay, with an established government ruling or controlling its internal and foreign affairs. Okay, so within that is the idea of sovereignty. And this is the ability of a state to govern its territory free from control of its internal affairs by other states or other countries. So again, you have to consider this. This is why I have the question in there. Can a country be truly independent or sovereign if it doesn't have that ability? And typically the answer is no. So we also think about other places on the globe where you have ideas, or at least ideas of territories or countries that are trying to do this, or in the past have tried, but has been limited. So you think, some examples, Palestine. All right, the idea of like a Palestinian state, where they're trying to form their own country independent from Israel. Yeah, they're able to essentially govern within parts of the regions like within the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, but with foreign affairs, it's not all that clear. All right, and there's obviously control by the Israelis on that point. Same thing, you look at this within Ukraine too, because within the Ukraine, obviously there's been conflict, there's been civil war since 2014, 2015, but also Russia interfering in their own affairs. So again, it's that idea of how sovereign are they, because this foreign adversary or other country or state is interfering and kind of messing with that. All right, so those are things to, again, be considerate of when we talk about, are you a sovereign nation if foreign actors, foreign countries, foreign governments are interfering or preventing you from being able to run your country effectively without that outside interference. All right. So yeah, any examples of states that might not be sovereign, and we'll ask that in class in person. All right. So the size of the states can vary, all right? You can be like Russia, which is 11% of the Earth's actual land. Remember that land only compromises like 1/3 of the Earth's, or not 1/3, about 1/4 of the Earth's surface is land. The other, 3/4 is water. So 11% of what's actually available is found in Russia. but they can also be really, really tiny. All right, so when we talk about these, we call them microstates, states with very small land areas. So typically they're geographically isolated and are used to their own sovereignty. So places like, these are examples of island nations. Okay, so Palau, Tonga, Tuvalu, Malta, and the Mediterranean. All their ones also within the Pacific and the Caribbean, but also you think about places that are, we talked about geographic boundaries and geographic state shapes, which does fit in with the section 8.3, but this year for 2020, 2021, we looked at that within, a little bit of the ethnicity unit too. Those countries are completely surrounded by other countries, okay? Landlocked and also, landlocked countries fit in there. So again, some other examples here. So Tuvalu, it is, an island chain nation, but it's only 26 kilometers in, length. And if you're trying to think about, well, what's a kilometer compared to miles, you divide it essentially by, there's a ratio to it, but essentially, it's like 15 miles. Okay, San Marino, and Monaco and the Vatican, really, really, really tiny. All right, so you can kind of see all the tiny micro states inside the EU. So Vatican City, okay, 0.44 kilometers. San Marino, 61. Monaco, 2.02. Andorra, Liechtenstein, you probably even go with Luxembourg in a little bit there too. But yeah, and you'd probably think that with populations that aren't necessarily all that high, but again, not a whole lot of land area, that they have very high population densities. Again, think back that Monaco has a population density that is way higher per square mile than they actually have total people, because again, they barely have 1 square mile worth of land. All right, so so that's kind of a part of the brief introduction. We're not going to talk about the United Nations here, but again, the idea of sovereignty is to consider the idea of North and South Korea. All right, so when we talk about the idea of with nation states and things like that, is going to be something we're going to come back to later. So that's kind of our very brief introduction, and we will continue and expand on these ideas in the next videos.